He asked, I said, why don't you just introduce me as the person that you know I am? So I really appreciate that, and I think that's a common theme that I want to go into today, understanding that we've done things the same way for a really long time, and it doesn't mean that they're all wrong, and it doesn't mean that it all needs change. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we have to get really open-minded and really curious moving forward in the world that we're going to be in, and to love on everybody, not just our next generation, but each other, because everybody's struggling. He talked about how becoming your own hero, working with people that have struggles or have gone through things. Raise your hand, or actually don't raise your hand. If you've never gone through anything, just put your hand up. Never had anything terrible happen. Anything that made you feel insecure. Anything that made you feel like you weren't enough. Anytime you're trying to measure up, you've never failed. Yeah, so it's all of us. It used to be such a struggle to explain what I did. And now what I say to people is we all need to learn to have a voice. We need to learn to believe in ourselves. We need to learn to have a really healthy relationship with ourselves first, so we can then have that with others, because that's what's going to create a beautiful community. It's not even just the concept of leadership and titles and labels. It's the concept of knowing who we are as a person is going to reflect in everything we do, in our job, in the way that we lead, in our businesses, in everything. So this is just a little bit about me. The only reason I'm going to go into a little bit of my background is because I truly believe connection is the key. If you can't connect to me, then I can't tell you a story and have you actually understand and have empathy. So you don't have to go through what I go through, but I have to share a little bit so that you can have empathy and understand that my credentials may not look the same, but my life gave me credentials. And as much as I didn't like that for a long time, that's the plan that God had for me. And I use that to do the work I do. I use that to love on people. And I'm going to keep using that to make the world a beautiful place, because that's the plan for all of us, right? Is there anybody in this room that's like, I want the world to be a crap hole, right? I want everybody to be negative. I want them to hate their jobs, not get along with people. None of us want that. We all want the same thing. We all have really good intentions and really good hearts. So basically, I have a lifetime of trauma. If there's any kind of trauma you can think of, I've had it. We don't need to go into the depths of that, but just imagine if you've been taught about trauma, I've experienced it all. I took that childhood trauma into my adulthood, because that's what we do sometimes, and I somewhat repeated that. But there came a stage in my life that I woke up and I decided I really didn't like myself, and I really hated my life, and that there was something better for me. And God also told me, this isn't my plan for you. I love you. Stop punishing yourself. Stop thinking this is what you deserve. You deserve better. So that's when my life changed. And I'm going to get into that story because it actually happened way before adulthood. And a lot of us have hero moments and decisions that we make, and we don't realize that they happened so much earlier in our life. And our leadership story starts so much earlier than we realize. Everybody's like, oh, I became a leader because where do we start? Assistant manager, right? Oh, right. Was there something under assistant manager? See, I love titles. But assistant manager, director, VP, COO, CEO, we all look at it as that. And I think the world is getting better. We're really trying not to look at labels. We're really trying not to define things. But I think if we can start looking at everybody that's coming your way and asking yourself, what's their story? Did they start leading a really long time ago and it's not on their resume? Because I bet it's not. Because there's shame and there's guilt and there's all these stories that we don't share with people because it's uncomfortable, right? Who has a story that is still uncomfortable? Who puts their entire life story on their resume? Exactly. Put your life story. She said too many people. All right, we got some people. Obviously, you don't need all of it on there, right? But some of it has some history. But that's not what we're taught, right? There's this format, and you're like, oh my gosh, I have to follow on these lines. I hate resumes. I hate bios. I want you to know that. Anybody that knows me knows that. I struggle with them. Poor Barry asked me for one time. I left that guy hanging for 6 days. I was like, I hate bios. Only because the concept boxes you in. But I think if we change the concept and people know, wait, I'm not boxed in. I can paint a picture that others will be okay with looking at. It'll change the story. So that gives you a little bit about me. This is just to give you a little bit of background. I started my nonprofit organization, Bring It, Push It, Own It, 2013 when my 23-year-old was in middle school and I saw her really struggling. The really crazy thing about that story is I was still in an abusive marriage. I was gonna go love on girls and show them how to love themselves. So the beautiful thing is that you do not have to be at the end of your story to create something beautiful. And so many people say to me, like, I'm not there yet. You're not supposed to be there. That's how you actually help people, because they want to know you understand their struggle. And so that saved my life, right? I'm loving on girls. I'm teaching them that they need to love themselves, teaching them how to empower each other, which is still a big issue. And now we've expanded that. A decade later, we realized, oh wait, we all have the same problems. It's not just girls. Although I will say we are still the minority. We don't have to get into that, but they're stats. But girls and women are still a minority in their own context, okay? So we've expanded that. We work with special needs. I have an athlete division. We work with women, because the one thing we all want, even if you say you don't, is to belong, is to matter, is to have a voice and to be valuable. That's the one thing we can all agree on. It doesn't matter who you are, and even if you haven't had trauma, you have that need. But we have to work on validating ourselves too, and I see a lot of adults still really struggling with that validation piece. So here's our mission: to improve mental health by increasing resiliency. Obviously, I have a history of that. I would say I'm credible. I've overcame a lot of things that were meant to take me down. As an at-risk girl, I am not supposed to be a CEO. I'm not supposed to be successful. That's crap, right? You write your own story. You decide who you are. Confidence and empathy in order to build strong, healthy communities. My goal is to have a healthy community. Healthy means open-minded, curious, relationships with people that are different than you. Stop going to coffee with people that are just like you. It never changes the dynamic. And I'm sorry, but we're still doing it. I can see people's stuff. I can see who you hang out with. I can see, and I understand that it's comfortable. It's comfortable. You want to hang out with somebody who's like-minded. And that is not to say you change your beliefs, you change your lifestyle to match people that are different than yours. But how in the world are we going to grow when everybody's having coffee with people that think just like them? To give an example, three of my team are here. I'd like them to stand up. Oh, I know. You're so thrilled. Yes, please. Applaud them. Applaud them. A lot of times they work tirelessly for free to love on this community with me, but the reason I'm pointing them out is we are completely different. We do things different. They have opened my eyes massively to the way that I've been programmed. I worked in corporate America for a long time trying to make it, right? And when they came onto my team, there were things they would say to me and I'm like, what? You can't do that. That's not okay, right? And then I'm like, wait, where's that coming from? Where's my curiosity? What's happening? Where's that coming from? Is it coming from a place of love? Do they have something to offer? When I'm working with everybody, they want to see themselves, right? You want to see yourself in somebody. So when I put my team in front of a group, wow, I can see myself in somebody who's maybe, if you're different or you have different views, it's a beautiful thing because you need to feel like you belong somewhere. Okay, this is where I'm going to end because I thought this was hilarious. And then we're going to do a little activity. Does everybody have a piece of paper? Yes, yes, yes. Oh my gosh. Does everybody have paper?
Yeah!
Yes. Okay, let's try this again. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, sorry, I should have started there. Okay, so I'm going to end here, and when we come back from the activity, I just want you to know my leadership, if you look at my resume, would have started with many things, and I'm going to go through that. But for me, the true story is my leadership started here at 12 years old when I had my first traumatic experience. Did I know that 5 years ago? Not really. But my leadership, which I cannot put on my resume for you, started here at 12 years old. And then here, did anybody else do where you put your hair up and you take the brush and then you spray it? Come on, put your hands up. Where's my generation? Isn't that awful? What were we doing? So, second time, 16, I moved out. I can't put any of this really in my bio or my resume. So I want to give you that connection piece as you go into this activity, because the activity can seem silly, but you can really expand yourself if you do this correctly. So how often do you get asked to go ask somebody what their biggest struggle is and they're a stranger? Super awkward, right? Yeah, good. I want you to feel awkward because that's how we grow. So you're going to take your paper. You're going to go find people you do not know, because I know a lot of people in here know people. You're going to find people you don't know. And pick out the ones that feel the most uncomfortable and do those first. And then just keep moving through your sheet. I love the faces. See, when you look uncomfortable, I feel very at home, because that's what my leadership is when you get uncomfortable and you do things that are just really awkward, you're going to grow massively, right? And as leaders, we think we're doing this every day, but are you? No, we're not doing this. We avoid it, right? Okay, so hop up, grab your papers, go find somebody you don't know to get you to sit down, right? Because we're taught, like, sit in your seat, behave. I mean, our children go to school for how many years and they sit in a seat? It's really hard to connect and get your brain and your body excited when you're sitting in a seat. And we know this works, so this is just to give you a piece. This is just a piece of what I do in my organization. We have to connect, and it cannot be, how are you? What do you do? I know that we're doing a good job of teaching people new ideas to network. If you meet me, I always ask you what you're excited about. Before, that was a cool thing to do in networking, because the question, how are you? That is an intimate conversation, because you're not going to tell me fully how you are. And I know that. So I'd rather ask you what you're excited about. That will lead me into a more connective conversation with you. Did anybody feel like they didn't get to know people or it wasn't awkward? Great. I did not hear the chicken dance, though. Where's my girl that said she was putting the Okay. Okay. All right. Yes. Okay. So I'm really grateful you guys got to experience that, because it's really to give you an idea of what are you doing in your spaces. How are you helping people connect on? They told me not to go over there. I told you I wasn't going to listen. I knew it. So what are you doing to get people a little awkward? I know if you ask somebody if they want to get awkward, they're going to tell you no. You don't ask them. You ask for forgiveness later, right? Because this is the key component to connection. My team has made me feel so awkward since I gained this amazing team over the last couple of years. I have had to dress up, do themes, be awkward. I hated and loved every minute of it, because I'm like, oh, they're pushing my limits. Look at this, right? And if you're not surrounding yourself with people like that, even just one, you don't have to have 3 of them. That's a whole, you got to work on yourself constantly. But if you're not surrounding yourself with one person that pushes your conditioned beliefs, your professional beliefs, any of that, they're not pushing you, they're not challenging you, they're not asking questions that the pit of your stomach gets uncomfortable once in a while, you might want to ask yourself why. Because that's something within you. Because I easily could have avoided my team. I could have been like, ooh, that's a lot for me to take, right? Okay, so I'm going to go into my leadership journey a little bit and just kind of share what I feel are nuggets that I've learned. And I would say some of the things that I'm going to say, yes, I've experienced in jobs that I've had. I've been in leadership before I was a CEO, but I think I'm owning the story now as I go out and share more, that my leadership 100% started at 12 years old when I had my first traumatic experience. The reason for that is, when I had that traumatic experience, at the time, I remember thinking, I want to be different. This isn't the life I want. Did I still make decisions that carried me into a life that's not what I should have had? Yes. But that thought was still there, and that leadership to want something better for myself was still there. And this is why I tell people when they say, well, how do you teach 12-year-old girls to lead? Easily. They have thoughts. They are more mature than we realize. They have gut instincts. They have intuition. All those things. It starts young. So started at 12, and then like I said, at 16, I moved out at 16 because it was safer to move out. I don't recommend that these days. I don't think it's even legal. I tell girls that's never the option. You want to go get help. But I'm mid-40s, and it was a different world. So 17, when I joined the Army, I had zero understanding of what that meant. And let's be real, I wasn't like, let me go lead and save my country. I mean, that would be a lie. I was like, hey, they're going to pay for me to go to school, and it's something bigger than me. I had no idea, but the minute you sign on that line, you put a uniform on, I take high value in the fact that I'm a leader. that I will stand up for my country. Does that mean I agree with all political beliefs? Does that mean I agree with the way we do everything? Absolutely not. That's not what it means. It means that I will lead for the things that I believe to keep my children safe, to keep our country safe. That's what that meant. But I had no idea at 17. So I was leading and didn't even know. Nobody said, you should go join the Army. I don't have any family members. Education starts with me. I just saw it and thought, wow, that's kind of a neat thing. In my 20s, I worked in dialysis. You would think like, oh, unless you're an RN or a clinic manager, you're not a leader. People's lives are in my hands. They can die if I do something wrong. So that was leadership. I had loved ones' lives in my hand. Has anybody ever had anybody experience dialysis or had to be on dialysis? It's very serious. And the people working with your family need to love people. And you need to do things correctly. I assisted in surgery. I won't go into how many different jobs I've had. It's kind of hilarious, probably about 20 different careers. So I assisted in surgery. That's very serious. You need to care about what you're doing because even these days things happen, right? I'm sure we've all heard about it. How does that happen? Human error. Somebody has to deeply care about people and not be quick to make decisions when it's unnecessary. I taught college. One of my old students is here. I was really grateful for that. And when I became an instructor, I didn't realize that my actual job at the time was going to be to truly show people to believe in themselves. No matter where you're at, no matter what you're feeling, what your struggle was, I didn't even know that I was mentoring and coaching then. And when your students tell you years and years later, like, hey, you were somebody that really had my back and you believed in me, that's leadership. But that wasn't my title, right? It's just adjunct faculty. Cute little name, right? I owned and led a construction business. Whew, that was probably one of my hardest things I've done. And I loved it as well because I got to mentor the men and I got to love on them because a lot of them come from the same background that I do. And I could see some of their behaviors that would have got them in trouble in a typical leadership environment. I knew where it was coming from. I'm like, hey, what's going on? Let's have a talk. What are you not sharing? What's going on at home? You know, it's heavy. We ask people how they are, but that they're not going to answer that. You have to either have somebody on your team that can identify when something is not good. When something is off with somebody, I know something is off. And I can take them aside and say, what's going on? What can I do? But they have to feel like I know. Otherwise, they're going to tell me nothing's wrong. And I've realized over the years that's my gift. My gift is that all that trauma led me to truly understand how to create a safe space for people and be warm, while at the same time I can be labeled assertive and aggressive. It all depends on perspective, right? Where we have to change that perspective because why are we seeing people a certain way? Are we digging deep to really understand where those thoughts come from? You have to stay open-minded and curious. That is going to be the biggest thing that I hope people walk away with today. That is why I have a great team. I'm always curious. Becca knows I'm going to pick on her. She's okay with it. Becca and I'm constantly having to be creative, pivot, find things that work for her. What makes her tick? How do I get her excited about this? Okay, she's not excited about that. Guess what, guys? Money does not light everybody up. Ugh, it'd be so much easier if it did, right? Just throw money at the problem and you move on. That's not your world. Next generation doesn't care about your money. They will not stay in a job if they're miserable, and even my generation. And the whole silent quitting, they're not silently quitting. We're just not listening, okay? And we're just not having conversations. Uncomfortable conversations. So left my construction business, walked away from my business, $0, and walked away from an abusive marriage. That's when my life truly started. But all my leadership started before then, right? And I'd already started my nonprofit. Leadership is navigating being a single parent on a poverty income. It's horrible. It's horrible. And so when I hear judgment statements about single moms, and I still hear them, it's heartbreaking. I did everything to be that mom and not take help. I don't recommend that to other women because it'll break you, okay? But that was leadership. And then started my nonprofit. And I just love this picture because I'm like a baby. And it's hilarious to me because, yes, this is the moment I think that you have those moments that you become your own hero and you don't even know it. I was like, they are gonna pay me money, this is solid, right? I had no idea these people were gonna scream at me. try to break me down. I was like, I'm already broken. No worries. We got that done, right? So boot camp for me was a breeze. I was like, you can scream at me and call me names. I was like, that doesn't bother me. I sent my son to the Air Force so they would treat him better. But yeah, I was like, I don't think the Army's for you. I kind of, was very nice to you your whole life. So yeah, I believe that at 12, at 16, and here, I became my own hero. But I kept messing up. And the people that you encounter, or they're going to be on your team, or you're going to have relationships with, they're going to keep messing up. But you have to get to the layer of what makes people tick. And I just am going to phase over this real quick, but connection, changing your state is the whole stay curious and open-minded. Change your state. You have a certain way to think. You've been taught a certain way to think. You may work for an organization that has a specific way that they do things, and that's okay. There's always room for a little bit of curiosity, though, no matter how the mission works or any of that. Ask the uncomfortable questions, get uncomfortable, process, and rewrite or write the story. So a lot of people haven't had a past that they need to rewrite, okay? And I realize that. A lot of people have had a really good life. But you still have an obligation to write a story. Our job as human beings is to make a world a better place and write a story for others. So if your life has been really great, you should really be writing a story for others it's amazing in whatever way you can. So that's where we'll get into connection is key, okay? That's why we did this activity. If you struggle to connect, there's going to be a void in you in anything you do. So even if you're an introvert, which Becca's an introvert, but she still needs connection. I mean, 100% she still needs connection. It's figuring out what is that connection for that person. So me, I'm an extrovert. I love people. Put me in all the spaces with hundreds of people. My husband as well. We're like, yes, people, right? If I put Becca in a room with 300 people that are going to crowd her, she's going to need 3 days to recover. Okay? But I say that with seriousness because I know my team member. If I give Becca all these assignments in the real world, right, nobody's going to give her a break. What are they going to say? Get your butt to work, do your job, right? Nope. If I give Becca all this stuff, I'm going to need to give her a break here. And I'm still learning. I'm learning every day how to be a better leader, how to have more empathy. Mental health and diagnoses are real. And if you think just sending your employee to a counselor is enough, it's not. It's your job to understand their diagnosis. And I know nobody wants to hear that. How can I lead? How can I love on her if I don't understand what she has going on and I can't help her? I can't understand when to stop giving her things, when to give her a break. Instead of like, you better work, you better do your thing, because that's how I function, right? I'm a go-getter. So find ways out of the box, titles, labels, job descriptions. I'm not saying every day you can go do human bingo, but you can bring people in that do things differently, that will create an environment of connection. You can come up with your own things. Just sitting at a big table and asking people how things are, guys, it's not connection. It's not fun. I mean, who really enjoys the team meetings? You enjoy your team meetings? They're great. I mean, you can enjoy them, but are you connecting? So to connect means you connect on the level of work you do, but is work your only life? For a lot of you, yes, but it shouldn't be. So work is a lot of your life, right? A lot of hours. But you're another person outside of that, and if you're not connecting that to your work, then there's a piece of you missing, right? You're not really connecting, right? Because you're missing that component. So get creative. I want you to get creative. I want to see leaders doing quirky, fun things. I want to see it different than it has been. I could give you a million ideas, but your people and the way you do things are different, and you need to be unique in that. But you need to know your people. You can do personality tests. I think they're good. I also think the more conversations you have with somebody and the more you pay attention, you'll know when they're having a mental health issue. You'll be able to say, hey, everything okay? I know something's going on, right? A personality test is not going to tell you that. It's not. It won't tell you that. So you have to be really observant of people. And yeah, it's a lot of work. If you want to be a leader, it's a lot of work. Sometimes I can be exhausted trying to be very empathetic and understand what's going on with my team. But that's my job, right? So I've said this before, figuring out what makes your team tick is just as important as your budget and deadlines. Because you have no budget and you have no deadline if you don't have a good team. And the thoughts and layers that take place between the E-suite down can be damaging. I want to say that, and I say that with love. I've talked to actually a lot of leaders at organizations in Fort Wayne, and they're like, Our people feel really disconnected from us up here. We've tried everything, and I'm like, it's not you. It's just generations of a message. We just have to change it because I think they're great leaders, but the people that work for them are like, oh, you're over here and you're better than us. So we still have this weird message of titles and labels, right? And so then their people don't connect with them. They're not honest with them. They got to bring an outsider in to find out what's going on. So you just have to work at it. There's several leaders in here that are very warm, that ask the questions. Brenda Gerber wasn't my leader, but somehow I made it down to her office all the time when I worked at the same organization. Why? Because she was warm and open-minded, and I could feel that, okay? So it doesn't necessarily have to be direct, but the people that are not in the E-suite with you, they feel disconnected. This is not my opinion. This is a fact. I sit at coffee shops and I listen to people talk, and I also meet with people a lot. And because I create a safe space, guess what? They tell you everything, which is awesome. You want to have those conversations. So it's a truth. So ask yourself, are you staying curious? That means asking questions when nobody else does, which can be looked at as assertive or aggressive, okay? I had somebody tell me yesterday, why am I always the only one asking questions? Because you're a leader, and it's uncomfortable, and I get it. The other people don't care. It's okay. But you have to be okay with that because it can be a lonely place. Leadership can be lonely if we don't do it the right way. Changing our state. So this is kind of going into how do we do these things? How do we change it? It's not like we're not capable. We are doing it. The world is going in such a great direction. There's great leaders. There's people that are excited. There's people that are stepping up that are like, hey, let's do things a little different. Or they've done it the same way and they're like, wait, I can change that. And that's the kind of leader you want. So staying open and curious, getting uncomfortable, and again, I can say, I mean uncomfortable. How many of you in the last, I guess we're in a new year. What is it, January? I don't know, 6 months. How many of you have actually not avoided conflict and had a very uncomfortable conversation? That did not end with a resolution. Good. Good. But I will tell you, what do you think the stats are on avoidance of conflict? It's uncomfortable. People think that they think of it as conflict, but it's not conflict. It's you have to have the conversation. Everybody needs to see the different views. And the other thing that's really interesting is everybody wants to come to a conclusion at the end. There's not always a conclusion. It's okay. You might be talking about something that might take another couple decades to fix. So don't try to be the person that's like, I gotta close this gap, I gotta fix it. You can't fix everything. If you're having uncomfortable conversations, if you have employees coming to you and you're like, oh my gosh, all the stuff they're laying on me, guess what? They're telling you instead of quitting. That means you're doing the right job. So it's uncomfortable, yes, but you need to have those conversations. Handle conflict, do not avoid it. I had a conversation in here. When you avoid conflict, you create a void somewhere else. Does that make sense? You create a void. When we don't handle things and we're not just honest, and I have the nickname Tisha, the truth-telling hero, because I'm just gonna tell you the truth. And it's not always comfortable, and it gets me in trouble, but I have to own that. So your beliefs, your cultures, your perspectives, I think we're still working on this. I think we're going in a really good direction. I go to a lot of things where we talk about this, but you can't just talk about it. You can't leave the thing and not ask yourself what your unconscious bias is. All the time. I have unconscious bias that I'm like, oh my God, where is that coming from? And so I have to dig into that, right? So you can't just hear people say your beliefs, cultures, and perspectives. You have to be careful with them because we're all different. You can't just read that. You need to be doing the work because we all have it. And I encounter people all the time. They're like, well, that's just the way it is. Okay. Is it though? There's some really great things that we don't need to change. I am not saying like everything and all the decades before us need to change. There's some really great things. But there's things that we can evolve on, and that is okay. So take some time to think about what you can learn and take away from everyone you encounter within your team. What gets them excited? Because if they just accepted a job to get paid and they're not excited, they will leave. There's a huge epidemic of it, right? After a pandemic, we would have thought everybody wanted a job. Everybody wants a job. They didn't have jobs. Guess what? They don't, right? And also I want to say, everybody that's out here being an entrepreneur, there was a huge uptick in being an entrepreneur. A lot of them don't want to be an entrepreneur. They just don't want to work for certain people. That's sad. They shouldn't be being an entrepreneur because it's not easy. It's hard. It's terrible. It's great and terrible. It's both, okay? So you got to think about that. They don't want to work for other people. Why? That's an easy fix. We just got to figure it out. But all these, there is a huge percentage of people doing things just because they don't want to go work for an organization. That's painful, right? Because there's good people running organizations. There really are. And it's just a perspective they may have gained from somebody else or another job, right? And then what do? Same thing with personal relationships. We take that into the next relationship. Same thing with our job. What do? You take your trauma into your next job. Every leader is bad there, like the last one, right? We have to break that. That's a belief as well that I tell people, well, it's not really fair for you to go into that job thinking that until they do that thing. Same with relationships, friendships, all of that. Everyone has a skill that we do not. I think we've been teaching that really well, but I think you really need to ask yourself every day, what skills do you not have that your team has? Because these girls have way more skills than I do in many areas, and here's me, awesome. Because I don't have time to learn all those skills. And if I don't use their skills, what'll happen? They'll leave me. And then they can't love on the world in the way that they do. So you need to always, what makes them tick? It's not always the money. Money's important. I say money's not important. Money's very important, but we've seen a lot of companies are paying a lot more, but it's not really fixing the issue, right? So the pay has went up, but we still have some of the same disconnect when I go to organizations and they say there's a disconnect from the top to the bottom. And this is another thing. I want to say a lot of the things I've been saying, I'm asking you to give grace. I'm asking you to love on people. I want you to know that there's two sides to that. There is also grit, and there is also taking action. And I am at a point where we do need to remind people that you can do hard things. I'm not against that. Becca knows I'll give her grace. Kara knows that. And then on the other side of that, I'll say, hey, we can do hard things. How do we get this done, right? So I think there's both sides, and I think we may have went really far over here with a lot of the grace and a lot of the empathy and the mental health, and it's really important. But knowing your mental health and loving yourself also says you could do hard things. We're equipped to do so much more than we realize. We're equipped to take on so many things thrown our way and do it really well. And so for me, I'm an action taker. And some people are like, that's terrible. You should never take action without a full plan. I disagree. Because if your team always has to wait to have everything figured out, they're going to get frustrated. So there's a line that you draw. Hey, in this area, I'm going to let you run with it. In this area, no. This is a hard no for me. And that's what I always tell my team. They know they can pull me a little over here, and this one's like, nope, we're not playing with this. This is a hard no, right? So, but I think when you give people that, they're like, ooh, okay, wait, I have creativity and excitement over here, but I have to stay here, right? So I think taking action, believing in yourself, telling people you are so capable. You can do so much more than you will ever realize. Your brain is equipped to heal, to change, to think differently, to do everything in a way that you haven't. So I would love to be the generations, plural, together, that we start rewriting this story. Because I don't say this to send you away thinking like, oh, leadership's like, we've gotten a bad rap. I say this to be honest. Again, I have a lot of conversations, and I want us to get leadership back to when I was a 12-year-old girl, and I looked at the girl in a blazer, and I said, I want to be her. She has a voice. She's leading. She's standing up for people. That was my story I made up, right? I want people to look at leadership as such a healthy thing that you can attain, but something you want to be a part of. Because there's a lot of people that tell me, I don't want to be in leadership. It's gotten a bad rap. I don't want people to dislike me, and that's sad. We have to change that story. But guess what? We get to rewrite the story or write the story. If you don't need to rewrite it, write it. If you're doing really awesome things, share that with other organizations. Share it with the generation that's coming in to work for you. Say, this is our story. Look at what we've written, and look how well it's going, and look how people feel and how they're reacting. So write the story. Let's empower everyone by finding what makes them unique, what gets them excited, how you can paint a beautiful team by knowing the real, deep, sometimes uncomfortable things will in turn create dream teams. We've worked with almost 2,000 people this year. There's 3 of us on the majority of the time. That's a lot of people. It's because they are a dream team. Because we work together, we lead together, we get excited. I'm constantly trying to figure out what makes them tick. How can I keep doing this thing? You know, on the days that I'm like, why do I do this? Leadership is really hard. I have a cry. They hear me, right? Because they need to hear me be vulnerable. And they're like, so Tisha, I feel like this happens every February. I'm like, yeah, it's real depressing in Indiana in February. So I need to take trips. But they see that. They see that vulnerability. They see that honest thing. So, and this is about having a conclusion and having these uncomfortable, hard conversations. Remember that it's not you against the other party. It's both parties against the challenge or obstacle. It's not a competition to see who wins the conversation. It's about speaking the truth. Truth is love. And that's still a complicated conversation because I will tell you the truth and it's not always going to feel really good and it can be uncomfortable and people want to shut down. But truth is love, but it's uncomfortable. Listening to truth and working together to achieve the solution of the good. So have real conversations with the people you encounter. Get uncomfortable. Don't worry about having a conclusion or needing them to think the same way you do. You don't have a conversation to get people to think like you. I mean, that's why we all avoid politics, right? But we're doing it in other areas of our life. So I want to end on, I'm very excited where I see things going. I have a 23-year-old, a 21-year-old, and a 17-year-old. Okay? And my 21-year-old is an Air Force firefighter. He runs his own business. He started a nonprofit at 21 years old. That shows you that there's a lot of things that are inspiring and giving hope. Yet I have a 23-year-old who refuses to ever work in corporate America again. And that's heartbreaking for me because she's really good. And that's just one person, right, that can do that to you. But there's one person that can change that perspective, right? If there's 10 of you, there's always going to be somebody who's not great, but then there's going to be somebody who's really great, and that person's going to get you really excited. You're going to be like, you know what, I am here because of that connection, that relationship. It's so important to have real connections, real relationship, and lead in an authentic, truthful way that's probably going to be a little uncomfortable, but it's going to massively impact what you do in this world and whatever you do. So I want to end with, we do have an International Women's Day for our organization in March. It's amazing. No, it is not just for women. If you're a man, you have a mother, right? You have to. Okay, so we celebrate women because our main mission is to empower girls to lead, to love on this community, to become their authentic selves. So we would love for you to celebrate with us. I mean, it will likely sell out. It's really fun. You will be doing a lot of getting to know people, connecting, hearing stories, and hear a little bit more about our organization. And I appreciate you allowing me to be truthful today. As hard as some of it can be to hear, I know that I see faces in this room that you are the real leaders. When I say there's people doing really great things, I see you, but keep it up, multiply it. Because like for me, I'm halfway to death. That's just the truth. You know, our lifespan's like what, 90? So I want to make sure that the next generation, you know, doesn't hide and run from things. We can do hard things. We can do really hard things. We can achieve really big things. And we can also love on people at the same time. And I don't think that's something we understand. Thank you.